My name is Olivia, and I've always been the dependable one in my family. The big sister, the problem solver, the one who carried everyone else's burdens without complaint. I grew up in a family where roles were as clear as the lines on my mother's wedding china. I was the responsible one. My brother Jake was the golden child, and my younger sister Emma was the free spirit, the dreamer, the one who got away with everything. When I adopted my daughter Lily at 3 years old, I promised her she'd never feel alone, never feel like an outsider. She had these big, watchful eyes and a quiet, serious way about her, like she was still figuring out if the world could be trusted. I remember the first time she called me Mom. I had to pull over on the highway because my vision blurred with tears. From that day, I swore she'd always have a place in my family. But some promises are harder to keep than others. My siblings were thrilled when Jake announced his engagement last spring. Big party, lots of champagne, and a diamond the size of a cherry pit. Everyone gushed. Emma took photos for Instagram, and I gave my obligatory smile, trying not to think about the way Lily's handmade congratulations card ended up abandoned on the edge of the counter, forgotten among the empty glasses. Still, Lily was excited. She wanted to be included, to feel like a part of this family that had always felt a bit distant. She even started looking at dresses online, asking if she should wear her hair up or down. I caught her practicing her smile in the mirror one night as if she were rehearsing for a role she wasn't quite sure she fit into. Then the invitation came. Thick, creamy paper with Jake and his fiancé's names embossed in gold. I opened it at the kitchen counter. While Lily was scribbling in her sketchbook at the table, I could feel her eyes on me as I read the words. And there it was, in small, sharp print at the bottom. Adults only. 18 plus, strictly enforced, no exceptions. I felt a cold wave of anger wash over me. I read it again, hoping I had misunderstood, but no. It was clear as day. Lily was 17. She'd be 17 the day of the wedding. She didn't qualify, and they weren't bending this rule for anyone, not even family. I looked up to find Lily watching me, her eyes cautious, like she already knew what I was going to say. "They don't want me there, do they?" she asked, her voice so steady it broke my heart. "It's just an adult-only wedding," I managed, trying to sound casual, but I knew the truth cut deeper than that. She gave a small nod, then turned back to her sketchbook, her pencil moving in sharp, fast strokes. She didn't say another word about the wedding that night, or the next day, or the day after that. She just grew a little quieter, a little more withdrawn, like a flower folding in on itself at the first hint of frost. I clicked not attending on the RSVP link without another thought. I didn't include a note, didn't send a text. Just quietly closed the door. They'd slammed in my daughter's face. But of course, that wasn't the end of it. The next morning, my phone lit up with a message from Jake. "Hey, just saw your RSVP, everything okay?" I didn't respond. A few hours later, Emma texted, "Jake said you're not coming to the wedding. What's going on?" Still, I said nothing. I knew my silence would say more than any carefully worded message ever could. I wasn't interested in justifying my choice to people who had already made it clear where Lily stood in their world. Then my mother called. She never calls just to chat, so I braced myself before picking up. "Olivia," she said, her voice tight. "I heard you're not coming to the wedding. Is this really about the age limit? You know, it's just a rule. Don't punish your brother over this." I took a deep breath. "I'm not punishing anyone, Mom. I'm just not going without Lily." There was a heavy silence on the line, the kind that feels like the drop before a roller coaster plunges. "You're being dramatic," she finally said. "It's just one night. Can't you let this go?" "I already did," I replied and ended the call. That should have been the end of it, but we both knew it wouldn't be. Not in my family, where every silence is a vacuum waiting to be filled with whispered judgments and backhanded compliments. When I looked over at Lily, still bent over her sketchbook, I felt a sharp pang of guilt. I couldn't change my family, but I could at least show her that she wasn't a second thought in mine, that she was my priority and always. Ignoring the calls and texts was harder than I thought. My family isn't the type to let things go, especially when they think they're in the right. Jake's fiancée, Lauren, sent me a long, bubbly message about how much they'd love to see us there, and how the age rule was just to keep things classy. I didn't reply. The next day, my mom left a voicemail. Her voice had that tight, strained quality she gets when she's trying to sound patient, but is really just 2 seconds away from snapping. "Olivia, this is getting ridiculous. It's one night, one wedding. You can't hold a grudge forever. Call me." I didn't. Then Emma tried. Her message was full of those passive-aggressive digs she's perfected over the years. "Hey, I get it. You're upset, but this is Jake's wedding. It's not fair to make it about you. Just come smile for the photos and let it go. You know how our family is. They won't change, so why even try?" That one stung mostly because she was right. They wouldn't change, but I didn't want Lily to grow up thinking that was okay, that she had to accept being sidelined just to keep the peace. Lily noticed, of course. She always notices. She's quiet, but not oblivious. One night, as I was putting the dishes away, she stood in the doorway of the kitchen, her arms crossed over her chest. "Are you mad at them because of me?" she asked, her voice small but steady. I put down the plate I was holding and turned to her. "No, sweetheart," I said, choosing my words carefully. "I'm not mad at you. I'm mad that they made you feel like you don't belong. That's not okay, and I won't pretend it is." She nodded slowly, her eyes drifting down to her bare feet. "I just don't want you to lose your family because of me." Her words hit like a punch to the gut. I crossed the room and wrapped her in a tight hug, my heart breaking a little at how much she felt like she had to carry this on her own. "You are my family," I whispered into her hair, "and I'm not losing anything that really matters." After that, the messages stopped, but the silence felt heavier, more charged. I knew my family. They weren't the type to let a grudge simmer quietly. They'd either double down or try to guilt me into coming back. A week later, a package arrived. It was a small box neatly wrapped in white paper with a silver ribbon. No note, no card, just a plain white envelope taped to the side. I opened it to find a pair of engraved champagne flutes, the kind couples use for their first toast at the reception. The base of each glass had Jake and Lauren's initials etched in delicate swirling script. The envelope held a simple typed note: "We hope you can celebrate with us. Family means everything." I stared at the glasses, my hands shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. Family means everything. Except when it comes to including my daughter, apparently. I put the box on the kitchen counter and walked away, my jaw tight, my pulse thundering in my ears. I didn't cry. I didn't smash the glasses against the wall like I wanted to. I just breathed through it, telling myself I'd made the right choice. Later that night, as I tucked Lily in, I noticed one of her drawings on the edge of her desk. It was a sketch of our house with me and her standing on the front steps, her hand in mine. There was a small, messy heart drawn above our heads, and for the first time in days, I felt a little bit of the weight in my chest ease. She hadn't given up on us. Neither would I. The next few weeks felt like walking through a field of broken glass. Every time my phone buzzed, I braced myself for another attempt at guilt-tripping me into attending the wedding. But as the days passed, the messages slowed, then stopped altogether. For a while, it felt like they'd finally accepted my decision, and I could breathe a little easier. Then the group chat blew up. It started with a photo Emma sent Jake and Lauren all dressed up, standing in front of a white, flower-covered arch with a chalkboard sign that read, "The countdown begins. 30 days until forever." Everyone in the family reacted with heart emojis, clapping hands, and exclamation points. Everyone but me. Then my mom chimed in. "Can't believe it's so close. This is going to be the wedding of the decade, family together again, just like old times." Emma quickly replied, "Yeah, it'll be perfect. Can't wait to see everyone there." The implication was clear. The whole family together, except us. I closed the chat and tossed my phone onto the couch, my stomach twisting into knots. I didn't respond, but I couldn't stop the anger from simmering just beneath my skin. That night, as I was making dinner, Lily wandered into the kitchen, her phone in hand. She hesitated at the edge of the counter, her eyes flicking nervously from the bubbling pot to me. "Mom," she said slowly, "are you okay?" I forced a smile, stirring the sauce a little too aggressively. "Of course, honey, just a long day." She lingered for a moment, then slid her phone across the counter toward me. "I saw this on Instagram," she whispered, her voice tight. I glanced down. It was a video Emma had posted, a behind-the-scenes clip from Jake's engagement party. Laughter, clinking glasses, and a champagne toast to family forever. I recognized my parents. Emma, a few cousins, even some of Jake's college friends, but not a single frame of us. Lily's lips were pressed into a thin line, her eyes glistening with a hurt she tried to hide behind a forced smile. I thought maybe they'd want us there," she said, her voice breaking. I felt my heart crack, the edges sharp and splintered. I reached across the counter and squeezed her hand. "They don't get to decide who our family is," I said, my voice steady but tight. "We do." That night, as I lay in bed, I felt something in me shift. I was done waiting for them to come around, done hoping they'd suddenly see Lily as more than just my daughter, but as a real, undeniable part of this family. The next morning, I cleared my schedule and sat down with a fresh notebook. I wasn't sure what I planned to write, but the words poured out of me like a dam had broken. "Dear family, you've made it clear where we stand. I won't pretend anymore. I won't drag Lily into rooms where she's barely acknowledged, won't force her into family photos where she's a ghost at the edge of the frame. You've chosen to exclude us. To draw that line, I'm choosing to respect it." I stared at the page, the words stark and final, like a closed door. For the first time in a long time, I felt a strange, unfamiliar sense of peace. I picked up my phone, scrolled to the family group chat, and hit the Leave Group button. I expected to feel a pang of regret, a sliver of doubt. But there was nothing. Just a quiet, calming stillness. When I told Lily later that day, her eyes widened, a mixture of surprise and something like relief washing over her face. "Really?" she whispered, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Really?" I said, pulling her into a hug. "We're done trying to fit into their picture. We'll make our own." She hugged me back tighter than usual, her small arms wrapping around me like a promise. That night, we ordered pizza, pulled out old photo albums, and made a new tradition. One that didn't involve being an afterthought. One that was just ours. For a while, the silence felt like a victory. The group chat had been a constant low-grade anxiety in my life for years, full of passive-aggressive jabs and subtle digs. Cutting it off felt like shedding a weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. But of course, my family didn't let it go. They never do. It started with a phone call from my mother. I ignored it, then a text from Emma. "Seriously, Olivia, you left the group chat. What is wrong with you?" I put my phone on silent. A few days later, my father left a voicemail. I didn't listen to it. I could imagine the tone. Disappointed, a little confused, a lot judgmental. Then Jake sent a message, short and clipped like a knife sliding between ribs. "If you're still upset about the wedding, you should just say so. This silent treatment is childish." I almost laughed when I read it. As if I hadn't made my reasons clear. As if I owed them an explanation for why I didn't want to sit through another event where my daughter would be treated like an outsider. But the real breaking point came when the wedding photos started circulating. They were everywhere. Instagram, Facebook, even a feature on some wedding blog that Lauren must have submitted. Beautiful shots of the venue, glowing pictures of Jake and Lauren dancing, our parents beaming proudly. Emma grinning like she'd just won the lottery. And then buried halfway through the gallery, a family portrait. Jake, Lauren, our parents, Emma, and a handful of cousins. The whole family, except us. I stared at the photo for a long time, my hands clenched so tightly around my phone that my knuckles turned white. It felt like a slap, a deliberate reminder of our place or lack thereof. Lily found me sitting at the kitchen table, my phone still glowing with the image. She paused in the doorway, her expression cautious, like she was bracing for another hit. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice small. I looked up at her, at the worry in her eyes, the way she twisted her hands together. And for a moment, I almost hid the phone, tried to spare her the sting. But I couldn't. "Not this time. Come here," I said, my voice rougher than I intended. She crossed the room slowly, her bare feet making soft padding sounds against the tile. I turned the phone so she could see the picture. Her eyes flicked over it, taking in the familiar faces, the forced smiles, the staged happiness. And then she looked at me, her mouth set in a thin, hard line. "They didn't even invite us," she whispered. I nodded, the tightness in my throat making it hard to speak. For a long moment, she just stood there, staring at the photo, as if she could will herself into the frame by sheer force of will. Then she exhaled a shaky, shuddering breath that broke my heart all over again. "Okay," she said, her voice flat, lifeless. She turned and walked back to her room without another word. I sat there, my phone still clutched in my hand, my chest tight with a combination of rage and heartbreak. I had tried so hard to protect her from this, to shield her from the small, cutting ways my family had always made her feel less. But there it was in black and white, a perfectly framed reminder that we weren't truly part of their world. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept picturing Lily's face, the way her eyes had gone blank. Her shoulders slumped as if a part of her had finally given up. I knew I couldn't let this slide. I had to do something not for revenge, but for her. The next morning, I pulled out my laptop, opened my email, and started typing. To my family. "You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. You don't get to pick and choose when we matter, when we're family, when Lily is part of your lives. You made it clear at the wedding, in that photo, and in every small cutting comment you've ever made. I'm done pretending it doesn't hurt. We're done." I hit send before I could second-guess myself, the words flying off into the digital void. I didn't expect a response, but it felt good to have said it, to have put my anger into words, to have drawn my own line in the sand. When I told Lily later, she looked at me with those serious, searching eyes of hers. And for the first time in weeks, I saw a hint of relief. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with unspoken emotions. I hugged her tight, my heart swelling with a fierce protective love. They could cut us out of their photos, their group chats, their carefully curated memories, but they couldn't erase what we had. They couldn't take away the family we'd built, the bond we'd chosen over the one we were born into. And that, I realized, was the only family that truly mattered. A few days after I sent that email, the first responses trickled in. Not surprisingly, my mother was the first to reply. Her message was a mess of emotional manipulation wrapped in the thin veneer of concern. "Olivia, I don't understand why you're doing this. We've always tried to include you and Lily, but you make it so hard. Family is about compromise, about forgiveness. We miss you, but this attitude is pushing everyone away. Please don't let this be the end of our family." I closed the email without replying. She hadn't understood a single word of what I'd said, or more likely, she'd chosen not to. Emma's response came next, shorter, colder. "Wow, I don't know what to say. If you want to cut us out, that's on you. Don't blame us when you're the one who chose to walk away." I let out a bitter laugh. They really had no idea, did they? No clue how much I'd sacrificed. How many times I'd swallowed my pride for the sake of keeping this fractured family together. Jake, of course, didn't bother replying at all. His silence felt like a confirmation, a final silent agreement that I was no longer part of his life. But the one that cut the deepest came a week later in a card slipped into my mailbox. It was from my father, a man of few words, but each one chosen with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. "Family is a choice. You made yours. I hope it brings you the peace you seek." I sat on the porch steps, turning the card over in my hands, my pulse pounding in my ears. I could almost picture him writing it, his thick, square handwriting filling the tiny card with cold, carefully chosen words. "Family is a choice, you made yours." He had no idea. I felt the anger building hot and sharp, cutting through the numbness I'd been carrying for weeks. I wanted to scream, to smash the card into 1,000 pieces, but I didn't. I just shoved it back into the envelope and slammed the mailbox shut. Later that night, as I was washing dishes, Lily wandered into the kitchen, her sketchbook tucked under her arm. She hesitated in the doorway, her eyes flicking from the soapy water to my face, searching for clues. "Mom," she asked, her voice small. I turned, wiping my hands on a dish towel. "Yeah, sweetie." She hesitated, her fingers tightening around the edge of her sketchbook. "Do you ever, I don't know, regret it, cutting them off?" I stared at her for a long moment, the question echoing in the space between us. Did I regret it? walking away from a family I'd spent my whole life trying to hold together. I crossed the room and pulled her into a hug, my heart aching at the uncertainty in her voice. "No," I whispered into her hair. "I don't regret it, not for a second." She relaxed against me, her small, bird-like frame sinking into my arms. "Okay," she whispered back. "Me neither." We stood like that for a long time, the sound of the dripping faucet, the only thing breaking the silence. 2 days later, another card arrived, this one from my mother. The handwriting was smaller, more cramped, like she'd written it in a hurry or with a shaky hand. "Olivia, I wish you'd reconsider. This family isn't perfect, but it's all we have. You can't just cut us out because of a misunderstanding. You're being stubborn and it's hurting everyone, especially Lily. We miss you." I felt a fresh wave of anger flare up, my fingers tightening around the card. Hurting everyone. Was she serious? They had pushed us out, drawn their lines, and now they wanted me to play the villain for choosing my daughter over their fragile, conditional love. I dropped the card into the trash without a second thought. That night, I sat down with Lily and we made a list. A simple, unspoken pact to reclaim our lives from the weight of my family's judgment. We wrote down everything we wanted to do, everything we'd put off because we'd been too busy trying to fit into a family that had never truly accepted us. Road trips, art shows, late-night pizza runs, quiet. Sunday mornings in our pajamas. Building our own traditions without the constant shadow of someone else's expectations. And as we sat there laughing over the ridiculous things we added to our list, I felt a lightness I hadn't felt in years. They could keep their cards, their guilt, their carefully constructed narratives. We didn't need them. We had each other. A few months passed. The initial shockwaves of my family's reaction had finally settled, leaving behind a quieter, more stable peace. I no longer flinched when my phone buzzed. I didn't wonder if I'd made the right choice. I just lived. Lily and I found a rhythm, a new kind of normal. We took that road trip we'd written on our list, winding our way up the coast, stopping at every kitschy roadside attraction we could find. We took silly pictures in front of giant rusting dinosaurs and ate ice cream cones on the hood of my old station wagon while the sun sank into the ocean. She even started sharing her art online, building a small but supportive following. One evening, as I scrolled through her latest post, a beautifully haunting sketch of a lone girl standing at the edge of a dark, swirling ocean, I realized just how much she had come into her own. She wasn't the quiet, withdrawn kid I'd brought home all those years ago. She had grown into someone strong, someone who knew her worth, and I had to believe that walking away from my family had been a part of that. Then one rainy Saturday afternoon, a letter arrived. Not a card this time. Not a hastily scribbled note, but a full-typed letter on thick, expensive paper. The return address caught my attention. My parents' house. I hesitated before opening it, my pulse quickening despite myself. "Dear Olivia, we've had some time to think and perhaps we handled things poorly. Perhaps we didn't fully appreciate what you and Lily have brought to this family. We miss you. We want to make things right. Please come for dinner, just the three of us. Let's talk. Love, Mom and Dad." I read the letter twice, then a third time, the words sinking in like slow poison. There it was, the closest thing to an apology I was ever likely to get from them. But even now it felt hollow, like a half-hearted attempt at sweeping everything under the rug. I set the letter down and leaned back in my chair, staring at the rain streaking down the window. Lily came into the room a few minutes later, a smudge of charcoal on her cheek, her eyes bright from a burst of creative energy. "What you got there?" she asked, nodding toward the letter. I considered lying, brushing it off, but then I handed it to her. She deserved to know. She read it silently, her face carefully blank, her eyes flicking back and forth as she took in every word. When she was done, she set the letter on the table and looked at me, her jaw set in a way that reminded me just how far we'd come. "Are you going to go?" she asked, her voice steady, but her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her hoodie. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table, and met her eyes. "No," I said firmly, "I'm not." She let out a breath, a small, relieved sigh that told me everything I needed to know. "Good," she whispered, a tiny, defiant smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. "Because they don't deserve us." I felt a warmth spread through my chest, a fierce, protective love that left no room for regret. "No, they don't," I agreed, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. We spent the rest of the afternoon baking cookies, the air filling with the warm, comforting scent of sugar and butter. We danced around the kitchen to old songs on the radio, our laughter echoing off the walls, our shared joy, a quiet, stubborn defiance against the weight of our past. Later that night, as I lay in bed, I thought about my parents, about the life I'd walked away from. I wondered if they'd ever truly understand why I had to choose Lily, why I had to choose myself. Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. But as I drifted off to sleep, the sound of Lily's quiet, steady breathing down the hall, I realized it didn't matter. I had chosen my family. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough story too for the holiday season. A mug that claimed I peaked in the womb was given to me. A new automobile was given to my sister. I grin as I thank them. On the way home, I then made one phone call. 3 days later, my parents were being questioned by police and my sister's automobile was gone. I wish I could claim that when I opened it, I was taken aback. I wish I could say that the mug surprised me, that I searched about for the true present after laughing politely. However, no, I saw the blocky lettering. As soon as I pulled aside the wrapping paper, I had a look into the womb. My stomach gave a small nod, saying, "Yep, that tracks." Like I was on some low-budget game show called Guess Who's Still the Family Punchline. I held it out for everyone to see. My mother laughed. My father grinned with pride. "You've always been that theatrical," my sister Kaylee observed, tilting her head, provided an explanation. I gave a silent smile, the sort that is socially acceptable in family pictures and hostage situations. Not the kind that reaches your eyeballs. Kaylee then unwrapped her present. When the camera pans up to a string quartet in a movie, do you remember how everything goes? Slow-mo and sparkles. This was it. However, it was my parents giving Kaylee a pair of vehicle keys wrapped up in a red satin bow, rather than a passionate proposal or a soldier coming home as if she hadn't known previously. She cried, "Oh my God," as if this hadn't been practiced, or if they hadn't previously hinted at the major surprises on Facebook. She squealed as she hurried outdoors in her little heeled heels, saying, "No way, no way, no way." I repeatedly trailed behind. I didn't want to see the automobile. I wanted to be sure I wasn't having hallucinations, and there was anything new, even though I already knew it would be ridiculously impossible. The dealer tax was still in effect. Silver, glossy, and sleek. I believe it was an Audi, but I can't be certain, since the ridiculousness of it caused me to momentarily lose consciousness. Mom put her hand on my arm and murmured, "She needs something safe for job interviews." As if I ought to be proud, as if I ought to be thankful. You mean this made sense because Kaylee was suddenly the face of job development after quitting 2 internships in 3 months due to their premature nature. Everyone was raving over the automobile, so I looked down at my cup once more. Still in my hand, still real inside over cinnamon buns and mimosas that I had cooked. Dad mentioned making investments for the future. Kaylee might finally stop using her car and damaging the bumper. Mom joked Kaylee shed a tear or two, said that they were the world's greatest parents. I said nothing at all. I just took a taste of my coffee. Irony was the flavor of the cup. After a while, I bid everyone farewell, gave them hugs, grinned cooperatively, and expressed my gratitude for the wonderful holiday. No scene, no snark. Simply be silent. By the time I arrived at my car, it was snowing, my real vehicle, the one I purchased for you 6 years prior, the one I spent the most of my 20s making depressing lentil soup and foregoing holidays to pay off. I started the engine, waited for it to warm up, and then sat there for a minute watching the snow move in sluggish, mushy streaks down the windshield. My phone then buzzed. I initially believed Kaylee was simply tagging me in something offensive. However, it was a warning against bank fraud at Elite Auto Center. A $23,648 transaction was made to your account. My gaze shifted from the TV to the snow and back again. The name of the dealership, I didn't need to look it up on Google. I was aware that Kaylee's automobile originated there. The framing of the license plate reminded me of it. Elite Auto Center, silver Audi, 23,000. My mouth became parched. I examined the card after opening my banking app. Not my primary one, not the same one I use for petrol and groceries. The other one I gave my parents access to the just-in-case card years ago, so they would have peace of mind in case of emergency. Because what if something happened and they needed help? My mother said Kaylee apparently qualified as an emergency because she had to look professional for her interview at pricey juice bars. Not even my heart raced. The strange thing was that I didn't perform a U-turn and barge back into their living room, nor did I yell or weep. They handed me a drink while I sat there staring at the $23,000 for a car that I had purchased with my card. As the snow turned the scene into a gentle, muted haze, I drove home in solitude. I stopped at a gas station, somewhere between miles 7 and 12, turned off the engine, blocked them from accessing my bank account, froze the card, logged out of all joint payment portals, and stopped the monthly transfer I had been making to them to help with the mortgage for the previous 2.5 years. I was never asked to pay for it. They just stated that things were tight. Technically, I proposed after Dad's operation. They agreed to it. They always do. I didn't give them a call. What should I have said? When the dealership calls, I want to know why you gave my sister's car and me a joke after committing credit card fraud. When the next mortgage payment fails, let them be perplexed. Let them ponder. I phoned one number and checked my messages. Not Dad, not Mom, not Kaylee, fraudulent services. Hello, when someone replied. I said, an unlawful charge has to be reported. It wasn't until the cup fell from my lap and onto the car's floor that I realized I was still holding it. It remained intact. Naturally, it didn't. That kind of thing never breaks when it should. I was awake earlier than the sun the next morning, despite the fact that I had hardly slept. The cup remained perched on the counter as if it desired recognition. I kept my hands off of it. I just stood there for a long, thinking how many times you have to be deceived before the pain ultimately goes away, while I watched the snow fall sideways outside my window. When I reopened my banking app, I thought perhaps there had been an accounting error, but there was no USD 23,648 from Elite Auto Center. As clear as day, bold typeface. I'm not sorry I drank from my broken green cup, which I had obtained during a college campus fundraiser. It's mine, even though it's ugly, malformed, and has a fractured handle. I used my tip money from working 2 shifts to pay for it. I haven't lost anything because of it. I couldn't stop thinking about how many times I had aided them. Quiet stuff, things they always anticipated but never explicitly asked for. For example, following Dad's surgery, Mom suggested that the mortgage was getting tight. I volunteered to assist. Only if it's not too much trouble, she said. However, after it established a pattern of paying $600 on time each month like clockwork, they never instructed me to stop. I also previously paid Kelly's parking fines. Back then, she still owned her old automobile, which she neglected until it broke down entirely. When her registration was flagged, she sobbed because she had forgotten about the tickets, said that it was destroying her life. At 2 a.m., I made my online payment and received no gratitude at all. A week later, a Venmo request was made for nails prior to the interview. I considered giving them a call and giving them a 24-hour window to return the automobile, but I knew precisely how it would work out. Mom would cry, "Let's all relax," Dad would remark in a neutral tone. Kaylee would simultaneously act perplexed and outraged. Thank you, but no. Rather, I dressed, picked up my coat, and went behind the wheel. As usual, their house had the same appearance. Half-lit fake reindeer on the grass and beige siding. After parking across the street, I waited for the engine to cool off before getting out. My hands remained still, but I felt a stinging sensation in my chest. Mom, dressed in her Christmas robe, opened the door. "Oh," she blinked. "Sabrina, I didn't anticipate it," I responded. "I know you used my credit card. As simple as that." No idle chatter. No hugs. Just the facts, directly between the eyes. After becoming pale for a moment, she grinned as if I had messed up my line and we were performing in a play together. Enter. The temperature is icy, still smelling of gingerbread and pine. I entered the living room. The floor was littered with pieces of wrapping paper. Kelly's automobile keys bow was affixed to the fireplace's side. Like any other morning, Dad was reading the paper while lounging on the couch. "Is everything all right?" Without looking up, he asked. He bought Kelly a vehicle using my emergency card. $23,000, I said. He was interested in that. He glanced at his mother, who gave him a "I got this" expression before turning back to face me. She began, "Well, honey," and I swear to God that I might have thrown the mug through their bay window if she had said it wasn't what it appeared to be. Kaylee needed a trustworthy interview tool badly. The bus system here is terrible, as you are aware. Dad flinched when I laughed so loudly. "Is that how you explain it? Because Kaylee dislikes public transit, you stole from me?" "It isn't theft." Dad raised a hand and said, "You allowed us to use that card in case of an emergency." I lost my temper. Not for high-end sedans, avoid being dramatic. "You make good money," Mom said. "We didn't anticipate it being a significant event." "You didn't think spending $23,000 of my money would be a huge deal?" A pause occurred. Everyone wants to say something during that awkward family pause, but no one wants to speak first. Naturally, the show's star then appeared. Kaylee entered with her phone in one hand and a giant iced coffee in the other. She wore fuzzy slippers and a full makeup face. "What's going on?" She looked at me as if I had a warrant and asked. "The car is causing her distress," Mom said quietly. I heard Kaylee roll her eyes so forcefully, Sabrina. "Oh my God, really? You're upset over that. You live alone and earn 6 figures. You don't seem to be in pain," I said. "You used my card without my consent. We call that fraud," she chuckled. "You're so uptight. This is exactly why you're still single. You act like money is love or something." I turned to my parents. "You can return the car today or pay me back in full. Otherwise, I'm filing a police report." Mom looked horrified. "You'd do that to us over a car." Dad looked tired, older than he did yesterday. "It's Christmas," Mom whispered, like the date was a shield against accountability. "You didn't even give me a real gift," I said. "He handed me a joke, then used my money to give her a car." I waited. No one spoke, then I said it. "The card is already frozen. The bank is aware, and I've canceled the monthly transfers. You'll need to figure out the mortgage on your own." That one hit. Mom gasped like I'd slapped her. "You're punishing us." "No," I said. "I'm just finally choosing myself." I walked out before anyone could cry or yell or throw out some sentimental line about family. I'd heard them all before. Family means sacrifice. Family comes first. Family is everything. What they never said but always meant was, family is everything. Until it inconveniences Kaylee. I didn't slam the door. I didn't owe them that much energy when I got back in my car. I sat for a minute with my hands on the steering wheel. It buzzed on my phone. New message from the bank: fraud report confirmation. I smiled. It wasn't a joyful smile, but it was real. Turns out I didn't peak in the womb. I just hadn't started climbing yet. I didn't expect to feel better, but I did. Not joyous, just steady. After all that transpired at their residence, there wasn't much left to say. There was just what was to be done. I sat down with a cup of coffee and unlocked my phone. I scrolled back through past texts until I located the one I'd written to my mom 3 years ago. When I gave her the emergency credit card, it was simple, just to be clear. The emergency card is for medical or house stuff exclusively. Please don't use it for anything else? I took a screenshot. Then I downloaded the credit card statement, the one with the $23,600 charge to Elite Auto Center, and preserved the photo of Kaylee standing in front of the silver automobile with a red bow. I'd stolen it at Christmas without thinking. Now it was evidence. I phoned the local police department's non-emergency number and inquired how to report financial theft. I was moved to an officer by a lady. I calmly and clearly explained that I hadn't approved the transaction and that I had only given my parents a credit card for emergencies, that I had paperwork and proof in writing. He wanted to know if I would mail it. Yes, I replied. He provided me with an email address and a report number. That afternoon, I submitted everything. Just the facts, no drama or shouting. I had no intention of hurting them. I ultimately made the decision to quit acting as though they hadn't crossed a boundary, which is why I was doing it. The repercussions started 3 days later. Kaylee's text message was the first indication. "You're amazing." She uploaded a video to her social media accounts a few hours later. She was having her car pulled out of the driveway, which was technically the one for which I had been penalized. She remained silent. The description said, "Just filmed it and stared into the camera like someone had robbed her. Some individuals find it unbearable to see you advance." He included me in it. I closed the app after watching it once I received a private message later that day. We had met a few of times, one of Kaylee's former classmates from high school. She said that Kaylee has a lengthy history of exploiting people and that she wasn't shocked. Although it wasn't intended to be consoling, I valued the candor. My mother left me a voicemail the next morning. She sounded tremulous. Today, the cops were at the door. They said that we were the subject of a fraud report. "How could you, Sabrina? This family is being torn apart by you." "We're not like this." The message was not saved by me. Later that afternoon, my father texted me briefly. "This has gotten out of hand. We must speak." I also didn't answer that. The extended family began to weigh in by the evening. First, my Aunt Diane sent out a group message. "Mother, did you really contact the cops by yourself?" I answered in a single sentence. Without my consent, she used my credit card. I filed a report. After that, nobody said anything. There was no surprise in the quiet. Simply said it was louder than normal. As the days went by, Kaylee's situation also began to fall apart. In January, she had intended to begin a new internship, something that was planned for her by one of Dad's pals. She couldn't get there without a car. They dropped her after she skipped the first few days. I was envious, resentful, and harsh. But she claimed online that I had destroyed her life. She didn't mention that she used my money without asking. My former bank sent me a notice in the interim. Logging into the shared mortgage portal had been attempted. He had already shut down my mother. All she would have noticed would have been a login problem. A link to the listing was sent to me a few weeks later. The owner of their home put it up for sale. They used their phones to snap the dimly lit pictures. I knew it was the same living room where they offered me a mug and gave Kaylee the vehicle keys. I clicked on each image. I was not arrogant. It didn't satisfy me. I was satisfied. I've finished explaining. I've given up trying. Being helpful just when it was convenient is over. Since the SMS and voicemail, I hadn't heard from them. No excuses, no justifications. Simply be silent. The charge was dropped a few days after the report was submitted. The card company promptly reimbursed the whole amount once the dealership towed the vehicle. There's no need to apologize. That evening, while drinking coffee on my couch, I launched my banking app. Everything was in its proper place. There is nothing lacking. Nothing was abused. Everything. Mine, once more. I remembered Christmas. When Kaylee squealed over the car, they grinned. They appeared so proud, as if they had done something kind and affectionate. I wonder whether their sense of pride has diminished. The cup remained in the garbage. I hadn't even bothered to remove it. It was no longer necessary for me. They disregarded the regulations. I recently formally announced it. There was silence for several weeks. No guilt-tripped voicemails, no texts, no calls, nothing but quiet. As if they hoped that if enough time went by, I would forget that anything had happened. After all that had been the beat for years, some quiet freeze, some tiny fire. After that, everything was reset as if nothing had ever burned. However, that was not the case here. The silence finally broke. My mother texted me to start it. "Can we have a conversation?" Me and you alone, similar to adults. I debated whether to ignore it for a minute as I stared at it. I wanted to look her in the eye, though I was curious to know what justification they had ultimately decided on. I thus concurred, an hour neutral ground location. We got together in a cafe close to my flat. Not the type of place they usually go. No booths, no menus, dripping with syrup. Black coffee, spotless tables, and insufficient privacy to cause a commotion. Which is most likely why she selected it. She was the first to arrive. By yourself, no? Kaylee, Dad was in the car. Too tired to come in, she said. Yes. He gave me a hug. I didn't return the hug. She seems unsurprised. We took a seat. As I sipped my coffee and waited for the play to begin, she tinkled with her wedding band. I've had time to reflect. She said almost anything I gave a nod didn't assist her, didn't sense the quiet. With a tight smile, she jumped right in. Sabrina, we were under pressure. Your dad has been under stress. Kaylee has gone missing. We had no intention of hurting you. Obviously not. They never want to do harm to others. This keeps happening. I simply think, she went on. You're doing so well now. You've been accountable all along. I hoped you would comprehend there was the guilt trip veiled in compliments I could afford to be taken advantage of. But they couldn't afford to be good. And now, she said, her voice lowered. It's taking longer than we anticipated to sell the house. A few things are behind us. Like a chess player attempting to read the board, she gave me a close look. I would appreciate it if you could assist with the mortgage for a few more months till things settle down. I took a seat. Makeup, no. Her smile wavered. I didn't complete. You didn't have to. She blinked. Will you actually allow your parents to lose their house? I leaned forward, clear, and a little at ease, I responded. You took advantage of me like a bank. Banks have conditions. You damaged them that touched down. She blinked once more slowly this time. We were in dire straits. No, you were entitled, I responded. There is a distinction. She slumped back, appearing smaller now, not frail but simply deflated, as if the act had finally lost its breath. She said she hoped time would cure things as the conversation came to an end. A few minutes later, I didn't disagree. I just didn't specify whose time she was referring to. The same silence that had accompanied me all year followed me home. However, it wasn't hefty this time. It was spotless, like a recently mopped floor. My cousin sent me a snapshot of a group conversation 2 days later. I didn't participate. Sabrina's actions in phoning the police are abhorrent. There was a miscommunication, and now after making a mistake, our parents are fighting for their lives. That then was the new story. Not deception, not pilfering, just a small whoopsie with a fancy car. I didn't respond. I just sent my cousin the message along with the credit card bill and 3 attachments. The card's parameters were outlined in a text message I sent years ago. Police confirmed the report. That was it. No explanation, no caption. I never heard from her again. A few days later, Kaylee appeared on the internet, fresh images and captions. The tone had changed. Now it was all ambiguous quotations about family and treachery. Only when you're helpful does that assist. Yes, I didn't even bother to answer. I no longer wanted to influence anyone's opinion. Either the important people would know or they wouldn't. In any case, I wasn't responsible for fixing it. The house did eventually sell enough to avoid foreclosure, but probably not for what they wanted. I got the listing link from someone. I didn't press the button. I didn't have to see my early years reduced to potential and square footage. They relocated to a smaller location across town. Mom sent me an email to update her address in case anything changed, so I know I didn't respond. I wasn't upset. I wasn't resentful. I had just finished. I tidied up the kitchen drawer one morning, which contains random items like old birthday cards, takeout menus, and keys to items I no longer possess. The folded-up credit card bill from December was in the very back. As a last step, I carefully and thoroughly tore it up. They used to claim that I didn't need as much because I was the stronger one. I could handle it. They were saying that you're more easily ignored. I learned to remain silent from them. As it happens, I was simply waiting for the appropriate opportunity to speak. You are now aware of what transpired. I went too far. According to some, I didn't go far enough. According to others, I didn't cause any trouble. I refrained from screaming. I didn't burn bridges or bang doors. I only set the limits. They didn't believe I could draw. However, what are your thoughts? Was it incorrect of me to report the scam to the police? To leave? Or was that the first time in a long time that I did anything right? Anyway, I appreciate you listening. In addition, if you're interested in hearing more tales like this one, sincere, untidy, and human, feel free to subscribe. Story 3. My mother claimed that the birthday cake was okay after I had eaten it. My girl froze in agony. She's acting. My mother sneered. Intolerant foods do not exist. My father also added. I remained silent. All we did was laugh. They regretted everything when I called them the following day. When we entered, the home smelled like store-bought candles and vanilla. There were balloons bouncing at the ceiling. Was the music so tinny when the plates clattered on the kitchen counter? Kind of happy. It always seems like it's an attempt to hide stress. I was holding Lily's hand a bit too tightly. She gave a single covert squeeze in return. The cake, iced pink with tidy, tiny rosettes piped around the borders, was already on the table. As if everything had been prepared for an Instagram picture shoot, there was a perfect 7-candle sitting in the middle, made at home, with a smile that stopped short of her eyes. My mother exclaimed cheerfully while straightening her apron. I grinned and nodded. Because you're meant to do that. Because words aren't always enough to win wars. Paper plates, courteous nods, and phony smiles are used to combat them. At first, I remained silent about the cake, but I questioned my mom in a casual way while she cut the portions. Isn't it gluten-free? She chuckled, as if I had said something cute. It is, of course. I made it myself. She stated it with such assurance and outrage that I almost felt ashamed to have asked. Lily gazed up at me with big, trusting eyes. I gave a nod. You have a birthday, my love. It's all right. She chose out her own glittering pink outfit that morning since she said it made her feel like a princess, and she grabbed her slice and sat down carefully, fixing the hem. She waited patiently for everyone else to be served. As her glittering shoes kicked a bit beneath the table, she silently rehearsed the words, "Thank you." I heard her. I wish I could tell you that something didn't feel right. I wish I could claim that as the knife dipped into the cake, time slowed down, or that my blood ran cold when I saw the icing. However, since it normally happens that way, it seemed natural. The worst betrayals don't have dramatic music and thunderclaps. They are tied with a bow and wrapped in tissue paper. We sang. In a single, gentle puff, Lily extinguished her candle. I could see her eyelashes quivering as she closed her eyes so tightly. She wished I had no idea what that was. Perhaps something easy. Perhaps it has to do with the fact that this year is better than previous. When she took her first mouthful, she grinned. A genuine smile, not forced or courteous. A little smile of relief and happiness, as if the day might turn out okay. After 20 minutes, she muttered that she wanted to go to the restroom and pulled on my sleeve. She had a pallid face. Her little hands trembled. Past the laughing, past the scent of lasagna, past the melting wax candles into icing. I escorted her down the hall. She attempted to go alone, but halfway there, she simply stopped, put a hand on her tummy, and gave me a wide-eyed, glazed look. Her knowledge of gluten intolerance is limited. I'll give you a simple explanation. Celiac illness is not something Lily has. Not even one piece of bread will kill her. However, she does have non-celiac gluten sensitivity. It's also true. It is true that a single taste of the incorrect item might result in hours of suffering. Sometimes she has days of pain bloating that makes her feel as though her skin is too tight, nausea and cramps that feel like someone is tying knots inside of her headaches that make moving painful. Despite just being 7, she has already mastered the art of concealing it after seeing the jokes on the internet. She was once softly informed that she was being difficult, and she heard the grown-ups chuckle about fictitious allergies. Being different bothers her. Being the gluten kid bothers her. She tends to keep the suffering to herself. It's already terrible when Lily claims that asking for aid hurts. We arrived at the restroom. I gently moved her dress out of the way so she wouldn't sit on it and assisted her in sitting on the floor. She began to scream and gripped her tummy. First quiet, then more forceful, as if she were apologizing with each breath. "Mommy, my stomach hurts," she said. "It aches a lot," I assured her. That was all right, and brushed her hair back from her face, assured her that she wasn't acting improperly. I assured her that I would always have her. How long we stayed there is unknown to me. Long enough for the noise from the party to become distant and muted. Long enough, even if the agony didn't, for her breathing to slow. Lily was clinging to my side, her face crimson and splotchy when we eventually emerged. Already, there was a lot of laughter. "She's acting like she was launching a parade," my mother cried out from the kitchen while brandishing her wine glass. Today's kids are very sensitive. When my dad stated that 2 of the cousins burst out laughing, my sister, "Apologies." "Probably just wants attention," Kara remarked with a sly smile. After all, it's her birthday. I could feel Lily's flinching through my own bones. I pulled her closer to me. I remained silent. That's when I noticed it, so not yet. By the counter is the garbage can. Half of the lid was open. The crumpled edge of a pastry box peeked out just enough for me to see. Not a cake that was baked by hand. Not even close. I stepped forward. Nobody took attention. They were too preoccupied with laughing, putting food on plates, and throwing napkins. I understood that the local supermarket where the package came from didn't offer gluten-free cakes unless you placed a special order weeks in advance. Even so, they put a large gold sticker on it free of gluten. This container. No label, no sticker. It was just your average flour-filled bakery cake. At the time, I sensed it. Not anger, not quite yet. Something colder, something more substantial. I took a picture of the box and the cake that was half eaten on the table using my phone. I took a picture of the dumb sign that stated, "Homemade with love wasn't love," that Mom had affixed to the counter. It was treachery pink frosted. I lowered myself to Lily's level. He was making every effort to keep from crying again. I'm making every effort to avoid ruining anything. "There was nothing wrong with you," I muttered. She gave a nod, a little wretched motion. "We're heading home." "My love." I spoke more loudly now so that everyone could hear me. Mom scowled. My dad opened his lips to say something, then changed his mind. I thought Kara might have sprained something because of how hard she rolled her eyes. We didn't hold back until someone intervened. We didn't wait for unfulfilled apologies. We left with my own rage nestled securely behind my ribs like a second spine. I was bearing the burden of my daughter's suffering. I wish I could say that we were chased by someone. The reality is that I wish I could tell you that someone phoned. They resumed their meal after laughing, and I came to a realization midway between the front entrance and the restroom. Never again was I going to allow them to laugh. Not at me and not at Lily. Never realizing your parents don't care about you doesn't happen overnight. Like water beneath a door, it infiltrates. It's first so little that you believe it's a figment of your imagination. Perhaps they were worn out. You could have been overly dramatic. Perhaps you would be easy to adore if you just put forth more effort. That's how I was raised to think. 1,000 little wounds. Each one is sufficiently little to be explained until the moment you become aware that you are bleeding out. When I was Lily's age, I also experienced similar migraines, negative ones, the type that caused the lights behind my eyes to burn and the world to tilt sideways. I would place a cool towel over my forehead and snuggle up on the couch, aim to keep your breathing quiet. Every time I had a little headache, my mother would roll her eyes, sigh deeply, and remark something like, "It must be nice to take a vacation again." My father referred to it as playing sick, said I needed to become more resilient, said that I was overly sensitive, as if it were a weakness, as if I couldn't get the stain off. The worst thing, I did believe them. At times I stopped telling them when something hurt. By the time I was a teenager, pains in the stomach and twisted ankles. Silently, I would sit in my room and limp. For what purpose was it? Weakness was pain. It was embarrassing to be weak. What your family values in ours is something you learn early on. It wasn't goodwill, it was perseverance. Regardless of the expense, act as though everything is all right. I made a self-promise not to do that to Lily when she was diagnosed with gluten sensitivity last year. I vowed to pay attention, trust her when she tells you that she hurts, allow for her suffering, even if it was more difficult, even if it caused awkwardness, particularly at that time, and I mostly fulfilled that commitment. However, it's ironic that when you're standing in the center of the battlefield, you grew up on old habits tend to die harder. It's amusing how simple it is to fall for the delusion that perhaps things will be different this time. They could have changed. They may, in a sense, come to her aid. For me, they never arrived. They were the same. I simply become more adept at deceiving myself. It was evident in the small details that preceded the celebration. When I reminded my mom about Lily's diet, she snorted. When I suggested packing safe snacks, my sister Kara rolled her eyes. The way Dad whispered to himself that nowadays everyone has allergies to everything, the way they made jokes about unexpected gluten bombs during the appetizers last Christmas, I dismissed it with a giggle and assured myself it was innocuous. They were simply being outdated. I reminded myself a lot of falsehoods, that I told myself, I will tell you that pride is the reason someone would fabricate a gluten-free cake. It's strength. It's the silent, resentful denial that anything that is not part of their experience is genuine. They didn't just question Lily's suffering. The notion that her needs required them to do anything at all was something they detested, even a minor one like changing the flour. Particularly anything that tiny as little things are inexpensive. This implies that you are not incapable of doing things if you choose not to. The reason is because you won't. I'm not implying that they decided to harm Lily today when they woke up that morning. That is not the worst of it. After we left the party, they didn't give her any thought. Lily and I sat in her room. Her glittery sneakers were left in the hallway as if they couldn't stand to see the rest of the day, and she was snuggled up in bed with her knees tucked under her chin. I got her a heating pad, sat on the floor next to her bed, and gently tucked her in. "Do you believe I made a mistake?" she muttered. My throat constricted. "No," I responded. "Sweetheart, everything you did was correct." She gave me a nod, but I could tell she wasn't really convinced, not quite yet. Not for a while, perhaps. Children are said to be resilient. I believe they mistake quiet with resilience. They believe that a child is okay if they continue to smile, show up, and laugh when appropriate. Sometimes it simply indicates that they have learned. If they're not, it makes no difference. That evening, I brewed myself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table in the dark, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator and the even fainter sound of Lily's breathing coming from the hallway. I reflected on all the times my parents had thrown me out. They made jokes about me all the time. Every birthday where the cake wasn't perfect, the presents were a little too harsh, and the smiles were a little too piercing. I considered how year after year I made myself smaller in an effort to be more lovable. And my thoughts turned to Lily, her glittering gown, her cautious little thank you, and her courageous smile despite her stomach churning. She was worthy of better. The following morning, when my mother began sending me texts, "I hope your condition has improved. We should avoid making a huge deal out of nothing. She is a strong young woman. She will recover." I didn't answer. When Care chimed in, Not yet. You're very dramatic. There was only one piece of cake. We didn't actually poison her. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't confused. So I didn't answer either. I had no doubts about myself. I wasn't considering the possibility that I was being overly sensitive. I saw them clearly for the first time, and I knew exactly what I needed to do. I had no intention of arguing. I had no intention of begging. I had no intention of explaining basic human decency to those who had ridiculed it all their lives. Without regrets, without remorse, without wasting any more time acting as though they deserved us. I was going to defend my daughter. You don't just up and leave people like that. You finally get pushed hard enough to see the cliff you've been standing on all along. So you leave. I sat at the kitchen table and gazed at my phone after we arrived home. The pictures were all there, glowing coldly in the light. The bakery box in the trash. The half-eaten cake with no gluten-free label. The texts where I warned them, baked them, made myself small and reasonable and polite. The jokes they made afterward about how a little flour never killed anybody. Proof not enough to undo what they did, but enough to make sure they didn't get to pretend it didn't happen. I told Mark I was going to call the police. He didn't argue. He just said, "I'll stay with Lily," and went back to sitting beside her, brushing her hair back. With that steady patience I used to think only saints had. I called the non-emergency line, told the woman on the other end that I needed to report intentional harm to a child. Explained everything. The allergy warnings, the medical diagnosis. The documented proof that they knew and served the cake anyway. They transferred me to a family services officer. He listened carefully, interrupting only to ask clear, pointed questions. Was Lily medically diagnosed? Yes, official paperwork from her pediatrician. Did the family know? Yes, texts and conversations proving it was their proof. They deliberately ignored it. Yes, photos, screenshots, voicemails. He was quiet for a second after I finished. Finally, he said, "We can file a report to..." Puts the incident on record. It's not a criminal charge, not unless further investigation finds clear evidence of reckless harm or a pattern. But it will stay documented. It will be there if you ever need it again. He didn't say it like it was a small thing. He said it like it was a weapon. And for once in my life, I didn't put it down. I sent him everything. Every photo, every text, every scrap of proof. They never thought I'd be brave enough to collect. When I hung up, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt like someone who had stopped stitching up wounds just to bleed slower. I was done bleeding for them. The first text came 10 minutes later. He called the police over a birthday party. "You need to stop before you ruin everything. Families have disagreements. Normal people don't call the cops over Kate and Dad. Predictably worse. Hope you're ready to raise that girl alone when Mark gets tired of your drama." There was the knife slid in where they always knew it would hurt. Not just attacking me, attacking Lily's home, attacking my marriage because they didn't just want me obedient. They wanted me afraid. I didn't reply, not because I didn't have words, because no words would make them hear what they refused to see. I sat down and started making a list instead. Not a list of opponents, a collection of folks who still knew how to love people. Lily deserved to be surrounded by people who would never laugh at her anguish. The second birthday celebration wasn't going to be extravagant. It wasn't going to have matching balloon arches or Instagram flawless dessert tables. It was supposed to have something better. It was going to have safety. I texted Mia first, Lily's godmother, and within minutes she was sharing images of picnic shelters available for rent. I emailed Lily's teacher next, who had previously sat with her over lunch when a replacement delivered the wrong snack and Lily got sick. I texted 3 of Lily's friends, parents, the ones who always double-checked labels without being asked. We had a strategy, a guest list, and a bakery order for gluten-free cupcakes in less than an hour. Personalized, frosted with tiny silver stars. My family members weren't invited. Not one, I also didn't feel bad about it. Not even a moment. Because you don't invite matchlighters to watch you frantically extinguish the fire. The phone called again that night. I let the voicemail go. She spoke in a tight, angry voice that was cloaked in phony sweetness. "Think about what you're doing, Aaron. Honey Lily needs her family. She requires a community. Don't allow your pride prevent her from having a loving environment as she grows up." The words fizzed in the air like acid as I sat there listening. However, they had referred to it as ridiculing a sick youngster. They had called love telling her lies. Love, love. Love isn't about denying the reality of someone else's suffering. Love doesn't chuckle when the person you are meant to protect is sobbing while curled up on the restroom floor. A show is not what love is. It's a pledge not to quarrel. But I considered phoning her back, simply said very gently. You wouldn't have poisoned her to make a point if you truly loved her. But then I came to a better realization. Even that much vitality wasn't theirs. Instead, I blocked the number. Kara, I'm blocked. I had decided to stop lecturing mature folks about fundamental decency. I had no intention of writing essays pleading for the necessities of life. They were aware, they simply didn't give a damn. The police officer confirmed that the complaint had been made by email the next morning. No criminal accusations. It was there, but not yet. Recorded, unquestionably, a little. I printed it off, placed it in a folder, and slipped it inside the lockbox containing Lily's first hospital wristband, birth certificates, and vaccination records. Evidence that we were important. Evidence that someone had paid attention. Evidence that the harm they caused this time would not just disappear. Lily remained silent over supper. We ate in the quiet clatter of forks as the dishwasher ran, and Mark prepared her favorite gluten-free pasta spaghetti. Lily then got onto my lap and put her cheek against my chest. Is wanting a different family a negative thing? She inquired. I gave her head a kiss on top. No, I responded. Sweetheart, it's courageous. That evening, we completed the preparations for her second birthday. No major surprises, no speeches, only cupcakes. Bubbles a park with Lily, glowing fiercely and laughing without any rough edges. Free, that's right. The manner in which she was due. The saddest aspect, in your opinion, is realizing that your family would sooner harm your child than own up to their mistakes. However, it isn't. The hardest part is what occurs when they attempt to rewrite, twist, and claw their way back into your life as if they have a right to do so. The fallout was delayed, but the betrayal was harsh. Rotten foolish. There was stillness at first. A few of days, no texts, no calls. Enough time for me to nearly drop my defenses. Then Kara sent the email. Subject line. I've pardoned your outburst for Lily's sake. I believe it's time for us all to move on. Let's move on from this. Lily's family should pardon her. As if she hadn't been the one to laugh as my daughter broken down in tears on the restroom floor. As if I should be the one to apologize. I didn't answer. Not because I was at a loss for words, because on the day I filed that report, I had already said all I needed to say. Mom then sent flowers, including a large bouquet of white roses and pink lilies. We love you both, it said on the card. A lifetime of love shouldn't be destroyed by a single miscommunication. I looked at the flowers for a while before throwing them in the garbage. Because here's the thing, love lasts a lifetime. One cake wouldn't be enough to ruin it if it were real, if a single moment of truth can erase it. There was never any love. After that, they got more intense voicemails, emails, and phone calls from blocked numbers from family members I hadn't spoken to in years. My aunt called to inform me that my mother was inconsolable. I received a Facebook message from my cousin inquiring about my mental health. Kara made a vague but pointed online post about people who used children against their families in order to get attention. They attempted to control the story because they couldn't control me. After that, they went too far. It was a Tuesday. I received a call from Lily's school about 230 hours before to pick up. Despite her composure, I could detect the stress in the front desk secretary's voice. "Hello, Mrs. Palmer. I simply wanted to make sure. Did you arrange for Lily to be picked up today by her grandparents? They claimed to have your consent when they arrived." My heart stopped beating. "No," I exclaimed, getting up so quickly that I toppled my chair. "Not at all. Don't let them have her." I was already behind the woman. "She has remained in the classroom. They have yet to see her. However, I advise getting in touch with the authorities and will be recording this." Already, I was calling the cops. I want to be clear. They did more than simply step over the line. They broke it. They attempted to abduct her when they arrived at her school, attempted to avoid me, as if they were still entitled to her. Any rights, any trust. I was already at the school when the police got there. Mark 2. The moment I phoned, he had left work. Lily was secure. Safe, but taken. She had failed to see them, and I'm grateful for it. Our statements were taken by the officer to verify the timing. I got in touch with the school calmly and professionally informed me that a formal no-contact order will now be put on file as a result of this. Not only a report, a formal request for civil protection, not a prison, a line they couldn't cross again without repercussions, but not handcuffs. They would also have to draw the boundaries by living with someone else for once. 2 days later, they made another attempt and left a box of toys and old family pictures on our porch. Lily located it, opened the lid, and gazed at a photo of herself sitting in my mother's lap as a toddler. "If I don't feel like loving them anymore, do I still have to?" she wondered. "No, baby," I murmured as I sat next to her. After giving a nod, she shut the box, didn't inquire again. That weekend was the second birthday celebration. It was a sunny, chilly day. Children were racing over the grass, laughing over cupcakes and brandishing bubble wands that glistened in the sunlight like stars. Lily put on her glittery gown once more. The identical one, that party's one. However, she didn't flinch when she wore it this time. She performed a dance. She chuckled. When someone handed her food, she didn't flinch or try to hide because everything had been meticulously inspected twice and prepared with love rather than ego. She was quite safe. Later, a couple other parents inquired in a low voice if everything was well. They had heard gossip. Nothing tangible. A family conflict had been brought up by someone's mother. Another person overheard me calling the police on my own. Mom, I didn't elaborate, did not defend, just stated that we had to act in Lily's best interests. They also gave a nod because it is understood by those who are important. A letter served as the last escalation, I typed. Mailed, I recognized my dad's wording, but there was no return address. This is the decision you made. We will never forget it. It is our hope that Lily will come to understand who truly loved her. Families never die. That cannot be altered. I didn't answer. I refrained from crying. The letter was not even kept by me. I tore it up, brewed some tea, and watched my kid and her father construct a pillow fort in the living room. And I came to a straightforward realization: families are temporary. Not the type that comes naturally, just the type you want. I made an official request to the daycare and school the next morning. Except for Mark and me, no pickups are permitted. There are no exceptions, no modifications without ID and in-person confirmation. I strengthened all the locks and upgraded the emergency connections. Not because I was scared, but rather because I was tired of allowing individuals to evade my goodwill. They are free to maintain their version of events. They may portray me as vengeful, theatrical, and unappreciative. However, what is the reality? They tossed it away despite my best efforts. Cake one bite at a time. One slight, just one chuckle. One willful treachery. The bridge wasn't burned by me. They buried it beneath. They always claimed that suffering wasn't genuine. They can now reside on the opposite side of it. Perhaps you believe that I overreacted. Perhaps you believe that I ought to have let it go, that the cake was all that it was. Only one bad moment. It was only a miscommunication. You might be correct. Or perhaps you've never had to face your child and explain why others who claim to love her continue to harm her. I wasn't expecting trouble when I started this. I had no desire to sever relations, submit reports, or alter school regulations. However, you eventually give up on someone changing if they repeatedly demonstrate that their pride comes above the safety of your child. Instead, you transform. Even if it means losing the last remnant of your family, you will defend your child. However, I'd want to hear from you. Do you believe I overreached myself? How would you have responded to it? If you liked the tale, please subscribe for more and leave a comment.